Creatine. Is it a miracle worker or just another hype? Let's find out. Hey, I'm Mike,
And I'm Twain.
and welcome to another episode of 40 Plus Fit, the podcast where we unpack the science of sustainable weight loss and fitness for those over 40. Today, we're diving into the world of creatine, a supplement that has been making waves in the fitness industry. Whether you're a seasoned gym goer or just starting out your fitness journey, this episode is packed with information to help you decide if creatine is right for you. For those who are new to the podcast, as
Yep.
we do focus on the fitness and lifestyle for people over the age of 40. Have myself, who's a 40 plus part of the community, I suppose, part of the 40 plus community. And we have
Yeah.
Twain, who's a trainer who helps to ensure that we live a, how should we put it, Twain? How would you introduce yourself here?
I just say like I work with primarily a lot of 40 plus people, 40 plus into the 50s and even the occasional, 60 plus individual. But yeah, that's primarily a large portion of the work that I do as a coach. Aside from some of the competitive stuff that I'm doing as well, a little bit more on the side for now, but no, in the future I might do a bit more of that. Competitive referring to people who are trying to be um competitive bodybuilders and powerlifters. But yeah, I think that's pretty much a good succinct summary.
Okay, so today we're going to tackle this topic of creatine. We're going to see how that creatine can actually fit into the fitness journey or the weight loss journey of anybody who's over the age of 40. So perhaps what we could do is we could just start out again, like we like to do whenever we tackle anything on supplements. Perhaps you can explain what creatine is and what's its actual function in the body.
So if you were to listen to your mom or dad, I suppose, creatine is essentially a steroid. You should not be taking it, right? It's a cause of a lot of heart issues, cause a lot of kidney issues, and it's a terrible supplement to take, it's dangerous. But that's also why you listen to podcasts like this, because so that you understand that none of that is really founded at all. And that creatine essentially is a very naturally occurring compound in the body. Okay, it's primarily found in your muscles. The main purpose of creatine is it actually facilitates a key role in energy production. Okay, creatine itself is actually made from amino acids, so it's technically built from components of protein, and it's made in the liver, in the kidneys, the pancreas. Once it's produced, you get majority of it, like 90+% of it, is going to be stored in the muscles, and then the remainder, it kind of goes to parts of the brain, parts of the heart, some other tissues in the body as well. Now, a lot of times people think like, you take creatine and straight away you're going to get stronger. But like, what's the mechanism behind how does it work, right?
Hmm.
The primary function of creatine in the body is to actually help you produce the energy currency called ATP. For those of you who are not so familiar, the very fancy name for that is adenosine triphosphate. So it's a technical chemical name, right? But it's the energy currency for almost every single cell. Actually, every cell in the body, not almost every single cell. It is the energy currency. And so ATP is crucial for fueling like just even basic cellular processes. But the major one we are concerned with here is actually muscle contraction during exercise. So that means it powers your ability to lift the weights. Okay. It's a quick source of energy as well, because all it needs to do is just break down from creatine. It needs to just cleave off and donate a phosphate group to adenosine diphosphate. And then boom, they add together and you get adenosine triphosphate, right? So it's kind of in the name itself. And then that gives you the ATP currency, and it allows you to then do these short bursts of like intense activity. So anything you're doing, like if you had suddenly jump and run and sprint and you lift weights, heavy weights, that first about 10 to 15 seconds is primarily everything being powered mostly by that creatine phosphate energy system. Yeah. So how did I do? Was that clear, you think?
Yeah, I think we could probably just end the episode now. Thanks for joining. Uh, yeah, no, I think that was a very good explanation. Um, I think it's like the part I actually didn't know that's new to me is the one where you're saying that it's actually the t first 10 to 15 seconds how much
Mm.
creatine plays a part there. Because to me, when it comes to first 10 to 15 seconds, I've always been a person who believes that's just the glucose that's going to kick in. Everything
Mm.
else will kick in after that. But the initial one that you jump in is always the glucose that says, "Hey, I'm here to party."
Yep,
So
yep,
it's interesting that you brought that up because I wasn't aware of that.
yep. I mean, to be fair, all the energy systems themselves, they are all working always. Okay. You have to understand that they're all working all the time.
Hmm.
The only thing is just the predominance of which energy system is supplying the energy. So as a really quick what do you call that? Primer on this, there are generally three types of energy systems in the body. You have the phosphagen system, which is basically a creatine phosphate system. You have your anaerobic system, the lactate system, and then
Yep.
you have the aerobic system. Okay, so just think of these as three energy tanks in your body. Okay, and they are not just energy tanks, but they're also producing certain amount of energy. They're replenishing up their energy rate at the same time. So when you're doing, let's say, a long activity, what happens is that predominantly they are like short, medium, and long kind of like energy usage.
Yep.
So your short is the creatine phosphate system, where the first 10 to 15 seconds, you need a lot of really quick, immediate energy to get things going, get started. And then what happens is that energy production is really, really, really high. And then the other two, your aerobic, your anaerobic systems are not contributing as much. And then once you cross that threshold from the 10 to 15 seconds over into longer than that, up to about a minute, 45 seconds to about a minute, you start to get into more of the anaerobic, your lactate system. So everybody has heard of that thing called the lactate burn, right? When you lift a weight, you go for about a minute, you get that burn in the muscle. So the reason why there's a lactate there is because your body's trying to use all these glucose, to kind of channel and power the contractions to produce more ATP. But the thing is, because in that process of using glucose, you're going to generate all these other byproducts that's going to cause that lactic acid buildup in the muscles, right? So there's all the byproducts there. And then once you cross over that into 60 seconds, to maybe 90 seconds plus, you start to go into the aerobic system already, which is then where, okay, cool. You start to use maybe all the other, I mean, you're still using a primary amount of glucose, but then you also start to tap into some of the fat store components of things.
Mm.
And you can see how that shift in the energy usage kind of goes from one to the next. So the body is really, really good at doing that almost in a very seamless fashion. Yeah, and all you need to do is that's why we have different ways of training. If you're trying to train specific energy systems, so to speak, or condition you to certain energy systems, because different sports actually require different things.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're looking at creatine on itself, then what are we going to look at for the benefits then of creatine usage? Like I know when I was younger, when I was in my teens, we had a national rugby player who did an ad on the TV where he did like sort of like a strip show because way back when I was young, there was this film called The Full Monty.
What are you watching, man? What are they showing in South
Yeah.
Africa?
Yeah, so they had this remember, I don't know if you know the show The Full Monty.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so this guy's name is Percy Montgomery, right? So his nickname is Monty. So the ad that they were doing is like the full Monty. So he would take his shirt off and then everybody went crazy over the body that he had at that time. And then it leaked out that he was using creatine. So creatine usage spiked at that time because everybody now said this is the magic bullet that's going to give you the body like what
This is the
Percy
thing,
Montgomery
right?
had
This
at
is
that
like
time.
Montgomery's body. So
Yeah. So I know that because I did use it a fair amount when I was younger. So I know it does help to build muscle mass, you know,
mm,
or
mm,
maybe not muscle mass, but muscle volume, should I say. And it does help a little bit with strength, I found. Probably that's due to the extension of the workout and all of that, that I was able to get more out of the workout, which helped with the strength rather than creatine providing the strength. And then I also found that my recovery was better.
mm. Yeah,
What
those
else? Well,
those are all valid points actually.
yeah.
And look, again, if we go back actually do, creatine essentially saturates your muscles with enough creatine stores so that essentially that initial energy phosphate system duration gets extended
Mm.
longer. So if you're talking about lifting like really heavy weights, there's a reason why we can only lift heavy weights for so long, right? Let's say if you really push yourself and you lift a weight that's like maybe 5 reps to 6 reps max that you can do, right? That's only going to last maybe 10, 15 seconds, 20 seconds maybe, you know. And so if you can take that weight and you can push it such that you can get another 1 or 2 reps, then what's that driver of that? What's the stimulus going to drive? It's going to drive, the amount of mechanical tension to your muscles, and by that extension, you get all those results that you mentioned. Which number one, you will get the increase in muscle mass if you consistently do this a lot. Number two, you're going to get that increased strength feeling already just because you're able to get 1, maybe 2 extra reps, and then you're going to get a bit more of that muscular like volumization effect because the creatine itself is stored in the muscles, which then pulls water in. Creatine is one of those molecules that is very hydrophilic. So they like to pull and hold on to water. I can't remember the exact amount. I think it's 2 grams, so maybe 2 grams to every gram of creatine, something like that. Or maybe even 3 grams, 2 to 3 grams, something like this. Where they pull in the water, they kind of hold it in the muscles. Yeah. So that's kind of how it helps. Like, and that's really the main thing. It gives you more energy to lift heavy and get that extra 1 or 2 reps. And then by that extension, you get the extra muscle mass that will grow from that consistent stimulus of doing that. Yeah, I think any questions on that so far, you think?
My question that I will go to, because the way that you phrased it there, is that what happens when you stop taking creatine?
That's actually a really good question. So here's the thing. A lot of times people think like, oh, if I take creatine, I'm gonna get like this sudden boost effect, and then if I stop taking creatine, it's gonna come down. Okay. It actually doesn't really happen like this. And it also kind of depends how you take creatine. Let me explain that. And we need to first understand what's the difference between, like, let's say supplementing with creatine and what the average person's creatine stores will be like just based on diet alone. If you are somebody that is already following the tenets that we have spouted many, many times if it comes to diet, right? Eat enough protein, eat enough whole foods protein, from your meats. Even just protein powder is totally fine, but mostly meats. You're going to get quite a decent amount of creatine going into your body. Okay, if you're like me, you're somebody that takes like, I eat a very high protein diet, but that's just because that's my preference. It's higher than what would be recommended and what I found to be working really well for my body. Okay, so every day I eat about 225 grams of protein or more, up to maybe 250. That's definitely excessive for a lot of people. To put it into context, 225 grams is the equivalent of maybe a kilo of meat a day. Okay, for most people, just to put it into context. Most of you will not need to do that. If you like meat, by all means, like me, then you can go ahead and do that. It's not going to have any adverse effects. But just because I do that a lot, I'm actually probably like my muscle stores are probably already relatively well saturated with creatine. The average person, because I think the American, because Americans use what imperial system, right? So 1 pound of beef or salmon gives you about like 1 or 2 grams. I think 2 grams of creatine. Let's say beef. Beef is pretty high in creatine, so it gives you about 2 grams of creatine. Which is a decent amount. So if you're already eating a 1 pound, what is that? 440 grams. I mean, for the rest of the world, right? So, yeah, about half a kilo of meat is going to give you about 2.5 grams of creatine. So if you're eating like that amount, then supplementing with extra to saturate up your stores will give some sort of a difference. So if you're regularly eating half a kilo of beef a day or half a kilo of meat a day, you're already going to have a decent amount of creatine stores. And then the additional supplementation, maybe it might give you that marginal effect of like 1 extra rep, kind of difference. That extra 3-4 seconds, in terms of energy phosphate production. Okay, it's not immaterial, but it's also not like it's significant, but it's also not like a night and day difference. It's not like Bane in Batman where you just turn the dial on the venom and it's like, you just suddenly juice up and 10 times your strength. But for the average individual that doesn't even eat that much protein, okay, just supplementing creatine alone can have a really big difference, right? A marked difference, because now let's say if you're only eating 200 grams of chicken a day, like for some people 200 grams of chicken sounds like a lot, So, so if you're only eating that amount, you don't eat like very much of any other kind of meat, you're only going to get like 0.5, 1 gram of creatine a day. Your muscles will be far from saturated. Your energy phosphate system production will not be very, very long. And so for you, maybe like you can last very long with like, moderate-ish weights for your strength levels, but maybe on the higher end of that, you might not be very, very good with lifting very heavy weights for, those kind of reps you're talking about. And so if you supplement your creatine, then yeah, it makes sense. You're going to get a marked difference. And if you go off that and you resume back your old diet where you're not eating that much meat, yeah, then there will likely be some performance fluctuations. But again, even in cases like this, in my experience with clients, because look, large majority of my clients come to me, they don't even eat like a proper protein diet, right? And if they say they want to use creatine, when they use it, they do feel like, hey, I feel a bit stronger, that kind of stuff. And then they run out of that and then they try to train and they don't think too much about it. They realize, oh, actually doesn't really seem to matter too much. Yeah. It doesn't impact their training to the extent that they think it would. So I don't think, it really has that huge of a night and day difference. What matters the most here is just how saturated we put the muscles, or how much we saturate the muscles with the creatine itself. Yeah. So if you're already eating a ton of protein, so the takeaway is if you're eating a ton of protein, upwards of half a kilo of meat a day, you're probably well saturated. You can just take like 3 grams, 5 grams a day of creatine, you'll be fine. Yeah, I think even if you just do like 5 grams a day for 3 weeks, you will start to see and feel some of those effects or so. Yeah, it'll be a
Okay.
gradual thing, though.
I think before we jump into exactly how to use the creatine there, maybe we can also just because we covered a bit of the benefits of creatine, but what about creatine for people over 40? Is there any specific benefits that people over 40 are going to get from implementing or integrating creatine into their diet?
I think the very obvious ones will be what we talked about with regards to the whole purpose of creatine in its muscular function, right? Which is allows you to push a bit harder, saturates your muscle stores without you having to eat a whole bunch of meat, extra meat. Because I think especially as we get older, sometimes you find that the digestive system is not as tolerant of eating like tons and tons of food as well. So it might be a case where, it can help in that sense. But I think the other thing that a lot of people have been sleeping on, and it's something that has been starting to show up a lot more in the research, it's actually the cognitive benefits. And as we get older, cognitive protection is very important, right? Because we want to make sure our brains stay as healthy. They're repairing and renewing and staying healthy so that into old age we can still remain spry, we can remain alert, and not let I think the most terrible stuff is like mental conditions like Alzheimer's and dementia, kind of creeping in, right? And so remember I mentioned earlier, creatine is actually stored in the brain as well as in the muscles, and it actually helps to replenish the ATP in the brain cells itself. And so this energy boost that you get actually enhances all your basic cognitive functions. You're talking memory, you're talking attention, you're talking mental clarity, especially tasks that are very mentally demanding. If you're sitting in front of the computer the whole day, you're a creative person, you have to deal with stuff, or you're like problem solver, whatever, engineer, anything that requires you to sit in front of a computer and like just be using your brain all day, right? Creating supplementation actually has been shown to almost like correlate and improve cognitive performance in tasks that require very quick thinking or problem solving. Yeah. Especially when the brain is under stress, especially when people are more sleep deprived or people are just not having the best quality sleep. Yeah. And it kind of makes sense also because you think about it in the same mechanism, it's very similar to in muscles, right? If you saturate the muscle stores with as much creatine, now you can do the extra 1-2 reps, right? Your energy phosphate production system goes high. The cool part is that your brain, right, it stretches that bit longer because the phosphate energy production system in the brain actually is a little bit more balanced together with like the glucose system itself. So these two actually kind of are very evenly loaded because even when energy demands increase, they kind of both increase together. Although of course, if you're just starting out, that's obviously the same format of, okay, you're using a bit more of the phosphate system versus the phosphagen system versus the anaerobic system. So so it really does help with that. And I think the recommendations have been, pretty much about, I can't remember the exact amount, but I remember the range tends to fall within, like, for the average person, if you're between 80 to 100 kilos, you're anywhere between like 3 grams to about 100 grams. Sorry, 3 grams to about 5 grams of creatine a day. Just supplementing with that can already be very beneficial. So you don't really need to go much more than that, to be honest.
All right. What about does creatine play any part in like heart health or weight management?
I think the weight management aspect is more to do with improving your performance in the gym and long-term muscle mass retention and growth. Yeah, but it's not a direct, like, I take creatine, suddenly I have more muscle, right? You still have to do the work that leads to, it allows you to do the work that leads to all these benefits.
So you
Uh,
don't take creatine and all of a sudden have the full Monty body, is it?
oh man, I wish over the counter. It'll be like a really, really high cost thing. And that's another thing, is like creatine is a super cheap supplement because it's really easy to manufacture. It's just a crystallization process that's very straightforward. And so what they do, as fitness marketing and supplement marketing goes, is they try to create different variants of it, and say like, oh, this one's better. You look at this creatine ethyl ester, or you have this creatine like acid, variant that is going to digest faster, or it's going to break down faster, it's going to go to your cells faster. Everybody that's listening to this, please don't waste your money. Okay, just buy your creatine supplement. First of all, search which one's the cheapest that you get. Okay, see the cheapest one, then take a look at the ingredient list. And the ingredient list just says creatine monohydrate. Okay, cool, you're good to go. Just take that. Like, you cannot, it's very hard to screw up the creatine manufacturing process. It's literally that simple. Okay, so don't fall for the hype marketing, just get the cheap one.
Okay. Um, you touched on briefly there that was on people over 40s, you can look at about 3 to 5 grams per day, right? Of creatine.
That's not just people for this, like, in general, to be honest.
Okay, but our target market here is generally over 40, so
Yes,
let's
correct.
address them and their pain points. So you're talking about 3 to 5 grams of creatine, right?
Yeah.
So if I was to try to, I mean, just for options here, let's say I want to try and get that 3 to 5 grams of creatine purely from my diet. What are
Hmm.
the best sources that I can go to in order to get that?
Oh, like I mentioned just now, beef. There's some fish actually that's really high. I think sardines, and then basically any other kind of like animal meat. So you go with like beef, sardines, and yeah, basically any other meat, even chicken, fish, other fish, salmon. Red meats are probably a pretty good source as well. Game meats are pretty good. But yeah, any kind of animal meats, to be honest.
Okay, so for 3 to 5 grams, again, let's just remind everyone, how much beef would that take in order to get 3 to 5 grams of creatine?
3 to 5 grams of creatine. About 1.5 pounds, right? So that would be what, 600 to 700 grams of meat,
Okay,
rough.
so
Yeah,
600 to
that would
700.
be about that would be about 3 grams.
Okay,
Uh,
never go for chicken.
for most meats. Oh, for chicken, it'll be almost up to a kilo to get the 3 grams in.
Okay, and
Yeah,
what about pork?
pork somewhere in between that. So let's say like 800, if I'm not. Again, these are just values I am spouting off the top of my head.
Yeah,
Just from what I remember, but the exact values will probably be like plus minus 50 around there.
yeah. So all we're doing here is just to give an idea as to like this is the ballpark figure of what you should be eating if
Mm.
you want to actually get this amount of creatine into your body. We're not saying like, okay, this is the exact amount to get this exact
Yeah,
amount, but just
yeah.
giving you an idea as to how much you actually need to eat compared to if you actually went and just bought yourself a creatine supplement and took in that creatine supplement. So
I sorry to interject that, but I believe I think I honestly think it's sardines. Somebody, I mean, if you're listening to this, definitely do a Google check and figure it out, right? But I believe it's sardines where they have the highest amount of creatine. It's actually higher, even higher than beef. And I believe it's almost like 4 grams or even slightly more than 4 grams per pound. Or Mike, if you're on a computer, maybe you can do a check on that. Like highest food source, is it herring or sardine or they're the same thing, right? Like herrings, sardines, they all fall under the same category.
All right.
I think
You
per pound is
are
like 4 grams or something.
correct. It is a herring. Generally
Herring, yeah.
considered the animal that provides the highest amount of creatine per serving. It's a fatty fish known for its high nutritional value, and it happens to be packed with creatine.
Well, almost half a kilo of herring, if that's what you enjoy. Um,
So a herring contains approximately 1.7 grams of creatine per 6 ounce serving.
what? Oh God, these imperial
So,
measures.
so 1.7 grams of creatine per 170 gram.
Ah, that's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah.
Hmm.
So half a kilo, essentially half a kilo will give you 5 grams.
Hmm. So actually,
Mm.
just everybody just eat herrings.
Yeah, I mean half a kilo of
Forget the
herring.
beef. You know, everybody's now complaining the beef is adding to the climate control and everything. So let's all just go and whack these herrings.
Oh man, and then overfishing's the next thing to complain about. Uh,
Okay,
but yeah,
so if you want to take it, if you want to get it from a food source, probably your best options is going to be here, the herring, um, or beef, chicken to the lower extent because you're probably going to have to eat quite a lot of chicken
a lot.
in order
Yeah.
to get the amount. So the easier way is to go for the supplement, right? Now the
Mm.
supplement comes in many different forms. Perhaps you can share some of them.
Oh, I said I briefly touched on them just now.
Mm,
So okay, so first of all, in terms of the ingredient you want creatine monohydrate because that's the one that's going to be most easily utilized and like kind of broken down by the body anyway. There's some other variants, as I mentioned, where they have some like creatine, HCl kind of variants, and again, all these are just they are just slightly different manufactured or filtered creatine powders that don't really give you any additional benefit because ultimately all of them do the same thing is that they need to saturate into the muscle stores. Now, a lot of these other variants, they will say it's quicker delivery to the muscles, things like this. That's actually not important at all because at the end of the day, your muscles, if you already be eating a regular amount of protein or even if you just take regular creatine, it's already going to go into your muscles anyway. And it's not like if you take it right now, just before you work out, it's going to go straight into the muscles. It doesn't work that way. The speed is not like this. And so it doesn't really matter how quickly it goes into the muscles in that sense, because it's more about just exposing your body to enough creatine so that it can saturate your body's muscle stores, if that makes sense. And as we talked about, it's not like you get a night and day difference
mm.
from not taking to just taking. Okay. So with all that out of the way, there's certain types in terms of delivery that they have for the creatine. You could either take it as a powder, a mixable powder, you could take it as a pill form. There's some that there are pill forms. I mean, if you like swallowing pills, then by all means. But I find that to get most of the time they'll give you like 1 gram of creatine in one of those bigger, like almost fish oil size capsules. Like where the capsule itself is like maybe almost
Size of your
what
head.
okay, not the size of it, but um,
It feels
but
like it to me when I looked at it.
yeah, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Like one of those really huge ass pills, and that's like just 1 gram. So if you have to take like 5 grams a day, you have to swallow 5 of those pills in addition to whatever supplements you're taking. So just
Mm.
imagine.
So
I think powder form is always way easier to do. Yeah, mixing with the drink, you to take it with some sort of sugar to help with the delivery mechanism. Mainly the idea there is that if you take the sugar, it spike the insulin. Insulin will help shuttle that as well into the cells. I think there is some mechanism behind that. Not absolutely necessary for the average person. Just take it and you'll go into your muscle cells eventually. So you don't have to worry too much. Yeah. So that's essentially it, honestly.
what
Yeah.
are your thoughts about there seems to be, as you said earlier, is some of the people now are trying to make money because creatine is too cheap. So they're coming with their own mixes and stuff. So I've noticed some where they've mixed it and they sell it as a package with protein powder. So your protein powder and
Oh,
creatine comes as one. What are
yep,
your
yep.
thoughts on those kind of products?
I I think it's probably not worth it. And here's my logic flow for that. Okay. Because because not everybody takes protein powder every day. Right. So here's the caveats. I take protein powder every day, so maybe it might be worth it for me.
Hmm.
Okay. But then in order to determine the worth, I need to calculate the cost between if I have creatine separately and I have the protein powder separately, and I add those two together, and I divide that out to see what's the serving and amount I'm taking per day, and equate that to the same amounts of nutritional value that I'm getting from that protein powder with the creatine. Does it equate out to be the same? My guess is probably not, because as you mentioned, the whole point is you combine these two things together, you can charge a premium for it. And the premium is likely to far outweigh any of the economical costs that you will get. Okay,
Hmm.
maybe it's a convenience thing, you're willing to pay for that, totally fine. But because creatine, as we have discussed, the best dosing for it, and we can talk about this in a little bit, but the best dosing for it is to take anywhere between 3 to 5 grams a day. So if you're taking that daily, okay, and you are going to take a protein powder daily, maybe this might make sense. But does it make sense in the long run from an economical standpoint if you can just order both separately and it's not that much of an issue for you to just take it? Like just scoop the creatine from that creatine packet and then scoop the protein powder from the protein powder packet, right? Like, I mean, it seems a bit no-brainer to me in that sense.
And you're
The
taking
other
the
thing,
creatine, so you have the power for the extra scoop, right?
yeah, you know what I mean? And the thing about it with mixed in powders like this, it's already pre-dosed for you, right? So they would already tell you, okay, with each serving of the protein powder, you will have how much, like 3 grams or whatever, you know, or maybe 1.5. I'm not too sure, whatever it is there. So that means that in order to, like, you might only get maybe 3 grams of creatine, when maybe for you, because you might be on the heavier side, you might need maybe 5 grams. So ultimately it's like then you still have to supplement with that. So do you take more protein powder again? But then if you take more protein powder, how does that affect like how much you're trying to eat for the day? If you already have everything else planned out. So I think given all those considerations, it just doesn't seem worth it to me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm aboard your train on that, because it takes the personalization out of the diet, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, the next question I'll ask is, I remember when I did use creatine,
Mm-hmm.
there was what we call, like, in my industry, there was an onboarding phase, that when you start taking creatine, you actually have to take a larger amount than what you would be taking consistently. I think they refer to this as a loading phase. Can
Okay.
you elaborate more on that?
Uh, okay. So for the whole loading issue, right? The idea behind it is it seems to make sense. Again, we're talking about muscle saturation. So I think what happened is when they first discovered like, oh, creatine's a pretty good supplement to kind of like sell, they needed a way to, I would say, get people to buy quite a fair amount, right? But the truth is that beyond a certain amount of creatine that you take in, the rest will kind of just be excreted. So once your muscles are saturated, they're saturated.
Hmm.
Okay. Now the question is, how quickly do you want to saturate your muscles? So if you do a loading phase, the idea is, yes, you can saturate up your muscles really quickly. And that might make sense for some people who want to do that. But as I mentioned, it honestly doesn't really seem to matter very much. They've done so many studies on this where if you do that for, let's say, the loading phase usually lasts anywhere between 7, I think they recommend up to like 14 days or something, right? Where you load up uh something like 25 grams a day or 28 grams a day, something like this, you know. And then you do that for 14 days, then you'll really fully saturate the body. You could achieve the same level of saturation because your body has a limit of how much it can store anyway. So
Hmm.
you could achieve the same level of saturation just by taking maybe 5-10 grams a day for the first 14 days anyway. So a large portion of this comes down to, I think it's just something that was started as a way to accentuate the sales of the product, to, try to push sales a little bit more, get people to buy more, because you're kind of just peeing it out anyway. You're going to waste it out. It's going to get excreted. and you would need to buy more anyway. So you can use up the product faster, and then you have the replenishment model, right? And then when you fall off it, then people tell you, oh no, you got to load again. When you don't take it for a while, and people are like, oh yeah, okay, cool, I have to load it. So I think it's more in line with that rather than the actual science of like really saturating muscles and the necessity of it. So you don't have to do a loading phase. That's my recommendation. There's no such thing as, I'm not saying no such thing, but there is such a thing as loading phase, but it's really not necessary. So if you just take like 5 grams a day, just start from now, take 5 grams a day, and then 3 weeks later, you probably will be well saturated, especially if you have already been eating a decently high protein diet.
Would you say that this loading phase thing is also more applicable to athletes rather than to people who are just taking it as a supplement for their diet? What we're probably talking to many of the people listening to this podcast is just regular folks who want to go and work out, want that little extra boost, and wants the benefits that we were speaking about earlier with regards to creatine. It wouldn't really make a huge difference to them to now go and load up on creatine, right? For them, it's just as long as you're just going and taking this supplement on a consistent basis, you're going to see the benefits down the line.
Yeah, 100%. The only difference is, to be honest, the only difference is you're going to experience a lot of nasty side effects if you do the loading, and you're going to waste. One of the side effects being you're going to waste a ton of money anyway. Or maybe not a ton of money, but you're just going to waste some money on it when you don't need to, But for an athletic perspective, even if you want to do a loading phase, I probably would not go too crazy with it. It really depends for the athlete. Again, it goes down to the same principles, like what is the purpose, that you want to load up with creatine for. If you want to saturate the muscle stores, because you acutely need this like really big increase in the training performance. I don't think loading creatine is really going to achieve that much of a acute difference in your training performance, to be honest. And then if the athlete has a very subpar diet, maybe you could argue for just a little bit more than the typical dosage, just to enhance a bit more of the recovery and just keep the performance up where it could be. But beyond that, it really still seems like just a waste, even from an athletic perspective. And I think the side effect part of it here bears mentioning, because if you load up, remember what I mentioned, creatine is very hydrophilic. For a lot of people, when they do the loading phase and they take way more than they need to, number one, you see this huge spike in water retention. Like some people, they take creatine, if you take like 3 to 5 grams a day, you're not going to experience a huge increase in weight, to be honest, in water retention, unless you're not even drinking a lot of water in the first place. If you're drinking a decent amount of water already, that 3 to 5 grams of creatine is not going to make a huge difference. If you load up 30 grams of creatine a day, right, depending on what calculators you find online, they might tell you, oh, take 30 grams a day or whatever. If you do that, that's going to, number one, possibly cause you digestive distress already. Number two, it's going to suddenly make you feel a little bit more dehydrated. It's been known to cause cramping as a side effect if you do the loading phase. And that's just really because you don't have enough water in you, and you have to suddenly dramatically increase your water amount. So again, more isn't always better. And in this case, you can hear I'm very clearly on the side of like, don't waste your money. Don't do a loading phase. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. You skip all the nasty side effects, you still get all the same benefits. Like, why?
All right. So we get to the point now where you've touched on quite a few times where you've said, okay, for majority of the people, 3 to 5 grams of creatine per day should suffice. Is there any difference depending on the individual, or are you still standing by that range, 3 to 5 grams? And if you stand by that range, what type of people, what's the determining factor when it comes to why I should take 3 grams or why I should take 5 grams? Is there a gender reason? Is that just a weight issue? What is it at play?
Oh, it's more just a mass issue. So how heavy you are. And then there's a formula for it. It's just like, with water, hydration, that kind of stuff, right? We start off at a base level, and then, you multiply that by your weight. I think for creatine, it's 30 milligrams per kilo. So 30 milligrams. So if you're talking about in terms of grams, because we're talking 3 to 5 grams, right? In terms of grams, that's 0.0003. Yes, I think that's, am I correct? 30 milligrams should be 0.003 grams, right? Because milli is 1,000.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome to the math podcast. So so if you're talking about grams, yeah, so so 2 zeros, so a decimal place, 2 zeros, and a number 3. I think that's the general formula. So if you multiply that by your weight, regardless of man or woman, doesn't really matter. I mean, there is supposed to be some difference in muscle composition, blah blah blah. But look, like that's not worth getting into. You're talking about marginal differences that's not going to matter. So use that formula and then multiply that by your weight. So if you are what, 90 kilos now, let's say, you're going to multiply that up, and what will you get? Let me see.
This is terrible, Twain. Your Chinese ancestors are turning in their graves right now.
Yeah, they
That you
really
could
are.
not just give the answer without having to look at a calculator.
Oh, wait, no. I think I am. Oh, 30 milligrams, not 3 milligrams. 30 milligrams. So that's 1 0 and a 3. Yes, they really are turning in their graves. I'm so sorry. I'll go to the temple after this and pray to them to forgive me. But yeah, so it's a 0.03 times your weight. So if you're not, let's say if you're 100 kilos, oh my God, why am I even doing this to myself? So if you're 100 kilos, that's going to be 3 grams, right?
Yeah.
0.03 times 100. We spent way too long trying to figure out this calculation, the math part of things. But yeah, just take that away, okay? 30 milligrams per kilo, 30 milligrams per kilo. And then whatever that is, if you're like 30 times 100, that's 3,000 milligrams if you're 100 kilos. So that's 3 grams. So you can see 3 grams is already like pretty much the recommended dosage point. And the reason why I say 5 grams is so that it just gives you a little bit more of the extra saturation, and it's not a significant amount more. Yeah, it's literally you just scoop 1 teaspoon, boom, done.
Would it be easy math to say 3% of your body mass?
That's another way to look at it, I guess. Would it be 3% though? No,
What is it?
100 kilos will not be 3%.
Huh.
Because 100 kilos will be 100,000 grams. And you're talking about 3,000.
But
Oh,
I'm saying
yeah,
it's 100 kilograms comes to 3 grams, right? So
yeah.
it would be 3%, no?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get what you mean. I'm sorry, guys, to all of you who are listening.
It's still early in the morning, is it?
No, it's not. It's not even too early. I think it's too late. Already in the day. I think we're recording this. For me here, it's midday or past midday already. I've done a lot of stuff in the morning, so you will have to forgive me.
Okay, so we got 3 grams for a person who's 100 kilograms.
Yeah. The
So,
formula again, write this down, 30 milligrams per kilo. I
so
think
the
that's
range you gave is 3 to 5 grams. So who would be taking the 5 grams? Is it depending on the weight, or is that different scenarios that come into play?
Yes. So the weight is a factor. I would say obviously the lighter you are, the less you can take. But also whether or not you're eating, a lot of protein, a lot of meat, which most 40 plus people I know they're not really eating much, at least in my experience. A lot of ladies don't tend to eat much. So just get them to take like 3 grams a day, even if they're weighing like 60, 70 gram, 60, 70 grams, 60, 70 kilos, 50 plus kilos. Usually they take 3 grams and they're good. They're well saturated already. For guys, I knew those guys that I trained that are maybe like 90 plus, 80 plus, 90 plus, we usually take upwards of 5 grams because they are generally a bit more athletic. If they are just not say sedentary, but if they're just starting out, 3 grams is good enough. So yeah, because most of the time for them, when I mentioned to increase the protein intake, they will already eat more meat and stuff. So 3 grams seems to be sufficient. So
Okay.
you can see how like because of varying factors, it ultimately kind of comes down to this same 3 to 5 gram range. So for everybody that's listening here, it's okay to understand all these other factors, but at the same time, just know if you want to have a takeaway, actionable takeaway. If you take 3 grams, you're probably good. If you want to be a little bit more secure and you're training really hard and you're always lifting weights like more than 4 times a week or something, maybe bump it up to 5 grams and you might have some difference there down the line. Yeah.
All right. All right. Just before we close with this one, I thought we'd just run through a couple of things that concerns people have, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Which probably are we can see if they are misconceptions or not.
Okay.
So the first one is that creatine causes rapid weight gain. I think you touched upon this. Maybe
Hmm.
you can just give us your thoughts again.
Yeah, I mean creating like I said, pulls in water. It combines and holds with water itself. So it causes muscles themselves to retain more water because they're stored in the muscles. So it can lead to a slight increase in body weight. Now, again, the caveat is just how much creatine did you take? And if you're saturating it over a long term, like we are recommending, the difference is not going to be very significant. If you're trying to maintain your weight and you're saturating over the long term, you might see after like within the first, 1 to 2 weeks of supplementing creatine, you might see a minor increase as your body saturates more and pulls more water into the muscles. Okay. So just take note if you start using creatine, take note of your average weight and say, hopefully your diet doesn't change. If your diet changes, then this throws everything out the window, right? But let's say you know how much you're eating maintenance, and your weight slowly increases after you take creatine, normal, totally normal. And the increase maybe is like a percentage of body weight or something. So you're not really, it's not a dramatic increase or anything. It's well within like a good
Yeah.
amount. And then by the way, if you're just like looking at yourself in the mirror, you probably will see that, hey, you haven't really changed too much in terms of like you haven't gained any substantial fat. In fact, if anything, you find that you might look a little bit more defined just because the creatine is pulling more water into the muscles and thus like creating the muscles, making the muscles swell, muscle cells swell a bit more. So if you're lean enough, you actually like will create that illusion of more definition and fullness. I mean, in bodybuilding we call this fullness. It's a very intentional thing that we do when somebody's really leaned out. Yeah. But for the average person, probably not. You might see a little bit of weight increase. If you do the loading, yeah, they're definitely going to see a weight spike. But you're also going to experience, like I said, mostly the stomach cramps, maybe some other muscular cramps. So make sure you drink your water, and you should be good if you somehow still choose to do the loading.
Okay, the next one. Creatine is only for bodybuilders.
No, for everybody. We discussed this already. Like the cognitive effects are actually well documented. Take it for your brain health, if not for your muscle health. Yeah.
Okay. Next one is that creatine causes kidney damage.
Yes, creatine is, oh no, I don't mean yes that creatine causes kidney damage. I mean yes that this is a concern that I've heard before. For healthy individuals, creatine does not pose any significant kidney risks. Okay, there is this thought that yeah, because creatine is kind of processed and produced in the kidneys that it causes concern, but it's also produced in the liver. Like why don't people talk about liver? But the main thing is that it does not give you any like risk. This one has been well studied. It's very safe. The only caveat I would say is like, hey, if you have pre-existing kidney conditions, obviously consult your doctor, blah, 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 this medical supervision stuff. Because one of the main things you just want to ensure is that your creatinine levels in your blood don't rise up dramatically high. Yeah, but I don't think there's really any cause for concern for most people. In fact, I have had some clients who um had previously had kidney issues, and then they still supplement creatine, and then together combined with all the other health lifestyle changes that we made, actually increase their health factors and lower their health risks, and actually improve on that kidney condition as well. So some of their like blood markers, like the creatinine levels drop significantly after they implemented all the changes, even while they were taking creatine.
Oh,
So yeah, so don't worry too much about that. But if, like I said, if you had pre-existing kidney conditions, ask your doctor, and I'm sure they'll give you a very educated answer. If their answer is different from what I say, maybe get a second opinion from another doctor just to compare and see what they say. And if they both agree, then who am I to argue with them, right? So yeah, so listen to your doctor.
okay.
Liability waived.
Second last one. Creatine is addictive.
That in what sense? Oh my God, like
The big
no.
muscles that you build, I suppose.
I mean, sure. There's nothing addictive about creatine. I can imagine. This honestly, that's the first one I've heard. First time I heard that creatine is addictive. Look, nobody's snorting creatine up their nose and experiencing some sort of cocaine high, right?
Hmm.
Can we even say cocaine on this podcast? I assume we can say whatever we want, right? I don't think we
Yeah.
can say. But
Right.
yeah,
And the
fine.
last one. Creatine is only beneficial for young people.
Nah, man. Again, old folks like our senior Mike over here and our soon to be senior my soon to be senior self, I'm just a couple years away from the big 4 yeah, it's really it's a health supplement more than anything. I think it came on the market as a sport supplement, but in emerging years, look, it's become more of a health supplement, really. So take it for your brain health. Supplement, 3 grams a day, you should be good.
Okay, fantastic. I think that's covered pretty much everything.
Awesome.
All right. So I suppose if we wrap up, we always have to put in, as always, it's essential to consult with your healthcare provider before starting any health supplement regimen. Remember, creatine is just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to overall health and fitness. Focus on a balanced diet, regular exercise, and adequate rest for optimal results.
It's funny whenever we talk about when we have to mention these disclaimers, it's like who really listens to these disclaimers anyway? I mean, like most of you who have listened,
Lawyers.
you're probably gonna go and grab a creatine anyway. And look, it's so safe that you're really not gonna experience any issues. Honestly, you're really not. Yeah, but again, yes, please listen to Mike's disclaimer about consulting as physician and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, man. But creatine is great. It's one of the most studied supplements in the world, I believe. If not the most studied supplement, there's tons and tons and tons and tons of studies on the side of please take it, it's really safe. Maybe a few that you might find that might say otherwise, but they're just cherry-picked and very poor study design. But that's
All
it,
right.
man. I think
So I think
that's
we'll
wrap
wrap it up
it.
there. Thanks for tuning in to our 40 plus fit episode. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more health and fitness tips.
All
And
right.
remember to visit our website for more info on all these different things we chat about. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah.
Until
Please
then,
reach out
stay
in the
strong
comment.
and keep moving.